Hey everybody,
What's up, guys?
we're doing the IronTrap podcast.
We got a full couch today.
Full couch today.
I'm surprised Moon hasn't tried to sit up on the couch with me yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Give it time.
yeah. So this one I think we mentioned in the last one or in Week in the Life of. We have Nick here, live in person
Yeah.
from Australia.
I think this is our
Howdy.
first international guest.
It is. It
Oh,
is.
nice.
Yeah.
I feel honored.
Yeah. So if we didn't mention, oh wait, should we get any of the stupid shit out of the way? Yeah, let's do that. So subscribe, listen,
Yeah.
do stuff.
Stay tuned. We'll talk to Nick in a couple minutes.
Yeah. Yes. Anything new going on?
Well, we bought a building.
Oh yeah. So that's out.
Yes. So
It
that
works.
video's out today. So if you haven't gone to YouTube, check that out. We bought a 1875 era mill.
Complex, I guess,
Yeah.
is what I was kind of saying. So if you guys didn't check it out, been working on it for quite a long while. We bought a really cool.
If Matt seems stressed at Carlisle, that's why.
Yeah, super stressed. I've been really stressed over all this. So we bought this kind of complex. The oldest building, as Mike said, is about 175 years old. And then there's a 20s era building. There's a lot of buildings on it, a ton of space, really unique. If you didn't check it out, you definitely should. We'll probably do a podcast there, maybe. That'd be kind of cool.
There's a lot to discuss of how it all came about. So.
Yeah, yes, we might even do a podcast on all of that portion of it. So that's cool. I think I mentioned I'm gonna probably unfortunately have to skip the indie show with the Mercury because it's not done. Literally tomorrow or the next day, it's going to upholstery and it's probably going to be there for a minimum of a week or two.
Yep.
And then the show is already there, and I still haven't sprayed the back half of the roof or anything else. So it's just not realistic. This just didn't happen. And not for lack of work, just
We
didn't
tried.
happen. We tried. So I'm gonna once I get it back from upholstery, I can really the back half of the roof is in primer, so I could probably kick ass on the rest of the painting and stuff. So yeah, that's going on.
Robot shirts are on the website. The remaining stock are available for sale today.
Oh yeah, we got a bunch of them.
So if you didn't get one before, they are now on the website. No guarantees of sizes or styles. It's whatever extras we ordered that didn't sell at Carlisle. So head to the website. grab
So
one
if you
one.
want a double XL and we only have a large, you should lose some weight and buy a large. Do what I did, lose some
Yeah.
weight, and you can get in that small shirt that you haven't worn in forever. Anyways, all right. Without further ado,
That's a good segue because the gentleman that designed our robot shirt is right here with us.
Right here.
Yeah.
So, Nick, give us a quick rundown on yourself, where you're from, your background, and then we'll get into
Yeah. So I grew up in Australia. Left Australia in my late teens, moved to London, worked over there for, pretty much my whole adult life in design and, working in the music industry and automotive industry and stuff like that as a graphic designer and art director. So I've kind of done bits of everything, bits of fashion. I'm doing a little side project now, which is called Surface M, which is Australia's first ever skateboard company.
That's
So I've
cool.
moved back to Australia just pre-COVID and revived this old skateboarding company that started in 1963.
Holy cow.
Ran until I think it's 79, 80, and then kind of just
Died, yeah.
died because the guy that set it up went on to other things. He had two
Mm.
careers, but doing that's keeping me busy and
and still designing. That's not like your
that's the thing, that's the bread and butter.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
So, did you, when you were young, were you into? I mean, some of these questions I already know the answer. So
Yeah.
I'm asking for other people. So, when you were young, were you into skateboarding and BMX and cars or any of that stuff? Was that?
Yeah, so where I grew up, it was on the beach. So it's like big surf, skate, it's kind of what you do, right? Like it's just every house has a skateboard, a surfboard, stuff like that. So it's hard not to be into those things. It's just, you're just surrounded by it.
Right.
A lot of the big kind of more corporate surf companies were started there. Like things like Billabong and stuff like that.
What town? Just so people.
It's called the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
So
okay.
it's like Queensland. it's a nice place. Not much, not much going on. It's a bit of a like cultural wasteland.
Yeah,
But,
but it's. I mean, I went there and it's pretty amazing visually.
Yeah.
From somebody from out of town, it's definitely
Yeah,
beautiful.
if you like sitting by the beach and that's kind of about it, then it's
Yeah.
the place. It's
Yeah,
the place to be. But you know, it's good. It's good.
But I know when we've been talking over the years that like bicycles and stuff. Like you were. I mean, even just like
Yeah,
fascinated with the design of bicycles and
yeah. Like
thinking,
I can't even remember how, but um, getting into like muscle bikes, like not Schwinn's, but the Schwinn equivalent. When I was like young, maybe like 13, 14, and obviously couldn't have a car, so that was my gateway. Like that was my thing, right? Like affordable, just doing them up.
were they hard to find? Like for us, I feel like they were everywhere. You
Not
know?
not real, like not really. It was
Okay.
kind of pre-internet. It was not that many people were into them.
So they
People
were
my
around.
age didn't really even know about them.
Okay.
Like the
Yeah.
older guys who had them when they were kids, like obviously collected them. But doing those up, and I was always into, I guess, growing up skating and stuff, and listening to like hip hop and all that. Like you see cars, like it's just part of the culture, right?
Yep.
So you just, whether it's like lowriders and bombs and stuff like that, it's just seeing it around in like pop culture.
Right. So that got you kind of like
Yeah. Yeah.
interested in it. If you
Yeah, yeah. And my dad, like back when, when my dad was young, he always had like muscle cars and stuff like that. And then
cool.
he got into like classic Porsches and stuff.
So
Yeah.
the car culture, regardless of what the maker model was, it was there. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. And so, what age did you move to England?
So I moved to London when I think I was 19.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Luckily I had an Italian passport, so I could just, no visas, just
Jump
and
around.
at that age you got no responsibilities.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you just packed my bag. Oh, I actually went on holidays first.
Okay.
The plan was to move to New York,
Okay.
and then went over there. My brother was already living there, so
Okay.
I went over on like a 2-week holiday.
To England. To
Yeah,
London.
to London.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, this is good.
Yeah.
I like this. So I literally went back, packed my bag. I think it was like less than 2 months I was back there,
Wow.
and straight into a job.
Did you go to university for design?
No.
Or just you were able
No,
to step into it?
so yeah, stepping back a little bit. So during school, I hated school. It was just wasn't
Yeah.
great. But I wasn't allowed to like drop out of high school. So the compromise was I could take a day off a week to go and work.
Okay.
So I was like, I think I'd done like 3 years of like apprenticeships doing like sign writing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I worked for a guy who we worked for one of the top surfboard shapers at the time, like painting surfboards
Oh,
for some of the like world champs. So
no kidding. Wow.
yeah, I don't know the process of how they do it now, but like then we were like masking things off in a spray booth, things like that. So I was like 15 years old, getting to skip a day of school, hanging out with all these like older surf guys just in this like factory, just
That's
so
pretty
it was
cool.
great. So that was kind of like a little introduction because I was young. Like I was always painting. I was always, making teas and stuff like that. But I didn't really have anyone around me who was like, oh, you can make like a career out of this. Like I didn't even know what graphic design was.
Right.
Even though I was like,
Doing it already.
yeah, I was kind of like playing around making signs and, playing with typography and stuff like that. So that kind of like, yeah, just opened my eyes to that a little bit.
And so you were able to also, it sounds like, because I feel like everybody has this instance where you got your eyes open to like not a normal 9 to 5 job.
Yeah.
Like you were like, these guys are obviously
Yeah.
living a surfer's lifestyle. So,
Yeah, exactly.
and
Yeah,
so-
and being like I was always into graffiti and stuff like that, so it kind of all fed into each other in a way. You know, and where I grew up, like, you know, a lot of people are builders, electricians, plumbers. Like, that's the kind of go-to thing. So doing like a creative job is like people are just like, what? Like, what is that? Like, how do you even make a living from that? It's just not.
People still do that. Probably.
Yeah,
People
yeah.
still do that as a whole in any of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that, so I could see that's probably like we talk about the switch, you know, so that was probably like the switch for you that you were like, oh, this is like, you can live off of this, you know, whatever.
And so like just by doing that stuff, and then I kind of, you know, hated school. So I finished school. There was no way I was going to college, like university or anything. I was like, I'm done with any kind of like studying or anything like that. So I'd been doing like, I put like a little magazine together just of like, I'd interview like, I don't know, some local punk band would come in. I'd go and like photograph them and just like a little fanzine kind of thing. But it'd be like, might be like punk rock, you know, some graffiti. I had this guy who was like a heroin addict, but he was like an amazing poet.
Oh,
he was actually a doctor, which was even wilder.
That's crazy.
So I'm like 17 years old, hanging out with this guy, getting these stories off him, just, you know, and piecing together this magazine and almost learning design at the same time, like graphic design. You know, you look back on them now and they're pretty bad, but I just kind of just, you know, winged it and just kind of taught myself and, you know, got this job in London and then just kind of, you know, faked it till I made it.
Yeah, we've all been there. We all do the same thing.
Yeah, I think all successful people did that to an extent.
Yeah.
You know, you have to do that to get those next hurdle or whatever.
Yeah, and it wasn't like, you know, I kind of had, you know, I guess I was a creative person, so it wasn't like I was completely clueless.
Yeah.
Maybe technically I wasn't that great. But, you know, it worked out in the end, so...
So when you went to London, was there a lot of like the networking side of it to start meeting people, or were you just hanging out in the right areas? Or?
I was lucky, like, you know, I've told this story so many times to people. Like, it's a long story. Like, I'll try and keep it short. So when I was a kid and I was into graffiti and stuff like that, I think it was like my 15th birthday. Mum drove me to this shop that was like the only kind of shop in our area that sold like spray paint and just anything like related, like international magazines and stuff. And I grabbed this one magazine because I think she gave me a budget for my birthday. She's like, you can pick out like a t-shirt and whatever. And I had like a few dollars left. So I grabbed this magazine and it was like a European graffiti magazine. And every other page, it had these collages of like tiny little photographs of like different pieces from around the world. And there was this one I loved in it. For some reason, it just stood out. And anyway, I started this job in London, and it was quite a corporate company. But there were these two guys there that they're maybe 10, 15 years older than me, and we're still good mates to this day. But we just got chatting, and I was like, "Oh, I'm really into graffiti." And my friend Tom was like, "Oh, you know, I'm into graffiti." And it turns out he's like a legend over in Europe.
Wow.
And I started explaining, oh, you know, this one piece that I love was this. And he's like, looked at me and he's like, I did that. So he kind of immediately took me under his wing.
Wow.
And Tom and my friend Paul worked in the music industry for a long time. So they knew everyone in London, like all the right people in music, fashion, design. So they were just like, you need to meet this guy. You'll get along with this guy. So immediately, like within the first week, I'd met like some of the top guys who were doing like the best work.
Wow.
You know? And they're all like good friends to this day. And they're older. So they kind of, I guess, treated me like their little brother and, you know, took me under their wing and just schooled me. And that was my university.
Nice.
You know.
And I feel like a lot of people have that in any, you know, in this creative, entrepreneurial, a lot of that stuff. I feel like there's always that one moment where you meet the right people or you are able to network, and
Yeah.
then it's like it goes from there because you just have the right.
Yeah,
You know?
it just felt like the way it all went down. It was like it was just meant to happen
Really?
that way. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, what was your first? Like, when did you? What was your first like project that started to like? There was something exciting or noteworthy that you were like, okay, shit's starting to happen. Like,
I think I kind of worked for some different design studios, like doing like some nice work, but it was more like, it might be like luxury fashion brands and stuff like that. And then I can't remember what age I was, but maybe mid-20s, and I got approached by a guy called Trevor Jackson, who's like the guy. He's a designer. He's owned a record label. He's kind of done it all, and he's like the guy in London, well, kind of in the world, really, like for just being an all-around creative.
Okay.
Approached me because he needed someone just to help, like a young guy to help him and kind of do all the shit, really, like do all the shit work that he didn't want to do. But he's doing projects for like DJ Shadow, Stussy, like Liam Gallagher, like all that kind of stuff.
yeah, okay.
So getting in with him was like, wow, okay, I'm obviously doing something right for him to kind of to get on
Right.
his radar and for him to approach me.
And his shit work is like,
Oh yeah, I'm
Give us-
still like just like doing some stuff for like, I don't know, I can't even remember, like Stussy, like just artworking some things or like, but
highlight of a lot of people's career, and that's
Yeah.
like his like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I worked at this studio, so I'd finish at like 6 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Walk to his house, like he lived in this like amazing warehouse in like central London. Walk like 5 minutes to his house, work with him till like 3 in the morning,
Wow.
go home, get up at 7 a.m., go to work, and but it sucked at the time, but like it paid off because after that, like I maybe only worked with him for like 6 months or something till it was just getting too much, but after that it was just like the doors open because I worked with him.
Yeah. That's like co-signing you, so you could just
Yeah. So that really stepped me up to that next level.
And now, were you doing stuff on your own, like away from the studio at that point after him?
Yeah, I was still doing like my own things and stuff.
Yeah.
But then from there, I kind of went to like he was from a music background.
Mm-hmm.
He owned a record label that, I don't know, put out things like he discovered like people like Fortet and put out LCD Sound System's first singles, and these guys have gone on, like, LCD Sound System went on to sell out Madison Square Garden.
Right.
Like they both like have all blown up. So getting that taste of doing music stuff and always being into music anyway, just from a kid,
Right.
just kind of opened my eyes to that side of design and thinking, I could like go down that direction.
Right.
Even though a lot of people like don't, it's like a dying industry, don't get involved, I was just like, whatever. I was young. I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like,
Yeah.
I just want to do it. So I went and got a job with an agency that just focused in doing music design.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was just, when I say an agency, it was like me and my buddy Neil. Well, he became my buddy, but it was like me, him, and like one other guy.
Okay.
So yeah.
And is that the one where you started doing some pretty noteworthy
Yeah.
music?
Well, they'd already been doing stuff like the Rolling Stones.
Wow.
All kinds of people. Because they'd been around for like maybe 15 years prior to me being there, and they were quite a well-known agency.
Okay.
So when I got in there, yeah, we started doing music. We did branch off a bit and started doing stuff for like Aston Martin and other kind of
Okay.
things like that, and then that kind of like opened up other avenues to doing like more like luxury brands and.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for the artists, were you guys doing like T-shirts, album
We would
covers?
so how it would work is like, we were doing stuff for like EMI and Sony and all the major record labels.
Okay.
And they would come to us and be like, hey, we've got this band, whoever it might be, You know, it could be a pop artist, could be something you're like, you know, you really don't want to work on. It's just, you know,
Not your thing.
a girl
Yeah.
group or whatever. But yeah, they kind of come to you and, you know, ask you to kind of create some concepts, and it was mainly the album covers.
Okay.
The packaging.
Yeah.
That's
And then
pretty cool.
occasionally it might be, oh, we want some merch or tour visuals for the stage and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was a lot of it like you were kind of like bidding with other designs?
Yeah. Well, what was funny was, so going back a little bit, so those guys that I got introduced to when I was first moved to London, a lot of like maybe 4 or 5 of my friends all worked in music. So we were all competing against each other.
Right.
So we'd be like at the pub like every night, and someone would be like, "Did you get that pitch in today for that whatever the group was?" And we were like, "Yeah." And then it was funny because the people from the record labels didn't realize we all knew each other. You know, so we were getting bits of information like, "Oh, what? They've offered you that much money? They've offered us only this?" Or like, you
Yeah,
know.
so you could all like work off of them.
Yeah.
Moon, do we need to get your hubcap outside? So was this when you were able to start working with, like, you did some of your noteworthy, or not noteworthy, but like
Yeah.
some of the bigger names that you've
Yeah,
you know-
so at that agency, like I said, like it's hard to be, if you start to get picky with who you're designing for, like they will just not come back to you.
Yeah,
like,
okay.
You're too hard to work with, whatever. So you got to be flexible. So one week I might be working on an album campaign for a big like British girl group, or it might be
Yeah.
someone like Black Sabbath that you know of, or you know, so things would come in that you're like, I'm into this.
Yeah.
So you had to kind of just adapt, and you know, yeah, I don't listen to like pop music, but you know,
Still pays the bills
Yeah, I was
and
saying,
pays
yeah.
the bills, and you know, you can still do cool stuff. You know?
Yeah.
Some things you don't put your name to.
Yeah.
You
That
know.
Spice Girls album.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know who designed that.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
But yeah. So you know, I did at that place, like some of the things that I liked were Black Sabbath that we've talked about. I worked with Aretha Franklin shortly before she passed away.
Oh, really?
Unfortunately, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I
What
did
was-
her last album before
kid-
she passed away. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And who else?
And the Black Sabbath album you did was 13, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So that was their album 13, which I think came out in 2013, but it had nothing to do with the year that it came out. That was the question that everyone, but I don't know why. You know, it was just.
I love that album cover. And that's actually a photo, correct? You guys did.
Yeah. So that was all shot for real. So the way, you know, that could have been done just
Digitally, definitely. Yeah.
But then it's like,
it's way cooler that it's like an actual
and
photo.
it's like, what's the fun? Like, you know, now you could just do that with AI, but like, what's the fun in that, right? But just backtracking a bit, like maybe a couple of years earlier, I befriended this guy called Storm Thorgerson, who Storm was probably in his, I don't know, be rude, but I reckon he was probably in his mid-70s,
Okay.
late 70s. And Storm was like one of the he was like the guy designing album covers. So he had a studio called Hypnosis back in the 60s, through the late 60s, I think, through the 70s, 80s. And he was doing all the Led Zeppelin album covers, bunch of Black Sabbath, every, like Peter Gabriel into the eight, like all the massive album covers. He was the guy. And there was some crazy like percentage that they say like 70% of your record collection back in the 70s he designed. He did all the Pink Floyd album covers, the Marquee Moon with the triangle,
Yeah.
you know, the pig that they flew over Battersea Power Station, like that was all him.
Wow.
And he's like, he grew up with Pink Floyd. They went to college together. So he was like the I think it's the fifth unofficial member of Pink Floyd, they used to say.
Wow.
So I got to meet Storm just by being in London, and you know, his health was kind of deteriorating at the end when he, you know, in later life. So he was always doing exhibitions of his work, and you know, raffling things off. And a friend of mine had designed a book, like a coffee table book of his work.
Oh, wow.
At the same time. So I got to meet him, and then I'd just go to his exhibitions because I was like down the road from my house.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he just like randomly, like, I don't know, just remembered me somehow. And always like said hello, and I'm just like freaking out inside because, you know,
He's
just
legit.
fanboying.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. And he was super eccentric. He was a funny character. But anyway, so if you look up Storm Thorgerson's work, anything he has done, like he did in modern day things for like Audio Slave and stuff like that.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but anything he did, they did it for real. So like, I can't remember what the album cover was, who it was for, but he moved like 700 cast iron beds, Victorian era bed frames, onto a beach, set them all up down the beach, got up in a crane, and they photographed them.
Wow.
So like, everything he did was real.
That's crazy.
No Photoshop, no, you know, and that's what made his work. You know, like the Pink Floyd cover where this, I can't remember the album cover. Sorry, the album name, but it's like the two guys shaking hands and one of them's on fire.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
That's all real. They shot that at, I think it was Universal Studios in California. So when that Black Sabbath thing came around, I was just thinking, well, he's already done the old Black Sabbath album covers.
Moon, you were... Give him 3 seconds, he'll be done.
You were the worst employee ever. We're doing a podcast, man.
He's
Caps
really,
off. He's done.
He's really playing it up today. I wish he would... Any other time he goes to the couch out in the other room.
Yeah.
Just showing off for Nick.
Yeah, he's like, Nick, you're telling a cool story. Let me...
Yeah.
Come on, Moon.
The cap's already off, dude. That's usually your
That's
thing.
it.
All
Go lay
done.
down. Come on. Go out there. Go ahead. Go. So... Yes,
Yeah,
he shot
so,
everything for
so
real.
he'd already done Black Sabbath covers.
Oh.
So when that job came in, it came in as like a pitch. So it's like, you know, you don't know how many other agencies are pitching as well.
Okay.
Record labels, just dealing with them in general is just, you know, they're notoriously a pain in the ass. So you could be working on some concepts and then you just don't hear from them.
Yeah, they just
They already
disappear.
had someone else in mind. It was just for whatever reason they just want to waste your time.
Yeah.
But so it came in to the studio, and it was like, you know, I was a fan of Sabbath anyway, so it was like a dream job.
Right.
So you know, it was quite daunting at the same time. You know, it also felt like, you know, the chances of me getting that, like,
No way.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it's one of my favorite bands, as if that's gonna happen, you know. And but yeah, it was daunting because Storm had already done a bunch of their album covers, so there's like expectations of something to,
Yeah.
you know. So when I kind of was putting some concepts together, you know, you also got to bear in mind as well, like, they're also expecting this thing to be that big on your iPhone, Spotify. So, like, it's not like designing stuff back in the 70s where you
Right.
could be, you know, do something quite cool. Like, because a lot of the time they're more worried about how it's going to look at that size, which
Yeah.
is stupid. Like,
Yep.
like,
We do the same thing with thumbnails. You know, it looks
Yeah, so-
giant on my computer, but we have to think about it's going to be
Yeah.
seen on a cell phone, so it's like this big.
Exactly the same kind of issue, right? So, you know, I'd kind of done some different concepts. You know, you obviously know the name of the album at that stage.
Yep.
So that's kind of something you're kind of is in the back of your head, and you're looking at different ways to kind of work with that. So I'd done some that were quite conceptual, that were maybe like more old Sabbath kind of esque. And then one that was, you know, the one that ended up being the final version, which is a bit safer. You know,
Yeah.
I knew that was kind of still on brand with Sabbath, but would kind of, you know, tie into like modern day needs. you
Yeah,
know, from
yeah.
the label.
Right.
And so when it actually when I got heard back from the label that I'd got it, you know, it was pretty exciting,
Wow.
daunting, all that. Then I'm like, shit, because I'd kind of done like a rough render. So then it's like, how am I going to actually, now I've got to figure out how to do this.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so that was like a whole nother thing of like having to explore how to do that. But sorry, going back to Storm, I was like, all right, well, Storm wouldn't do this fake. He wouldn't do it.
Right.
So I'm going to do it for real. You know, because like if I bump into him again at his exhibition,
Because he kind of handed it to you. Is that?
no, he had nothing to do with it. Like
Okay.
he probably hadn't worked with him for like 30 or 20 years or
Oh,
something.
okay.
But it was just more like if he finds out I've done a new Sabbath album and it's shit, or like I've done it, like, you know, I kind of want to be able to go to him, go, oh look, I've done this and it's for real. Like it's not fake. It's not
right.
You know.
Right.
So yeah. And then there was a whole story about how we actually created the thing. I don't know if you want me to go into that, but
You can give us the cliff notes for sure.
yeah. All right. So I'll try and keep it short. So basically, we knew we were going to set this big 13 on fire. Need a location. A friend of ours, his parents live like an hour or so out of London on a farm. So we're like, all right, that's great. That's going to be free because obviously budgets are like minuscule, like nowadays with music. And initially it was like, all right, well, we'll get this big 13 made. I contacted this furniture maker that made stuff out of like cane furniture. Like, so he sculpted these big 13s and I think we had like 3 or 4 of them made. And I just thought, oh yeah, I'll just go and like light them on fire. Thinking like, you know, whatever. I like fire. But, the photographer's like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, I want someone there, like, you know, who's a professional. So and made sense, right? Yeah. But so Jim, whose farm it was, his dad, like, we had to ask him, and his dad's like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. And he's like, oh, such and such who drinks in my local pub is like in special effects. Can't remember his name. I wish I could, because he was retired, but he was like the guy in Hollywood for special effects. He'd done all the original Superman films. I think he'd done like things like the Gremlins films.
Whoa.
All this kind of shit. And I'm like, yeah, we don't have that kind of budget. And he's like, no, that's fine. He said he'll just come down, just give him like a case of beer. So
that's the kind of budget we're working with.
So he came down. Like, he is like, yeah, he's the guy. So he's come down. He's probably an older guy in his 70s. He's come down with his son. His son had just got off. He'd finished the day before, he'd finished working on the new Harry Potter film. So like, I've got these 2 heavy hitter guys there, and I'm like, there's like 3 of us with like flashlights and just super like
bare bones,
and they're used to being on like these massive sets. So it was just endless amounts of apologies, just like, you know, but they were cool.
We've been in that situation before.
Yeah, like super amateur. But yeah, and then we kind of did it, and you know, they were like, oh, you should have made them out of this. Like, they were saying, oh, it should have been like, should have done it out of like some tubing, and we could have run like gas pipes through it so we could control it with gas and turn it on and off. Where I'd got them made out of wicker, so they kind of doused them in diesel fuel and cut then that underlay that you put under carpet to soak the fuel, and then they'd just ignite, right? And the first like 3 didn't work, and we'd been there all day. I'm like, shit, we've got 1 left.
Why didn't they work? They just didn't. They
just didn't burn the way I thought they would burn. They kind of like burn a little bit, but then they'd start like breaking off and crumbling, and so it was kind of like it was just not working. We got it on the last one, because I was just like, any diesel you have left, just cover these things in diesel. So it just went up in a massive fireball. So then the actual finished result of what you see is like the last, like when it was kind of calming down, and the photographer is just firing like this
rapid shot.
Yeah, rapid shot. And then we kind of just had to like figure out what was the best one, and maybe just comp in a little bit here and there. But
I'd love to see the first frame of when it goes up. You probably can't even see the 13.
Well, online,
it's just all flame.
Well, online. So because we were doing it for real, I was also like, I want to like we might as well film this.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
we might as well get someone to film this. Like we're going to all this trouble anyway.
Yep.
So there is a film online where you can see us like making it and setting it up, and you can see the scale of the 13s and all that
wow.
kind of stuff.
Yeah, I gotta check that out.
And then Sabbath loved it. Ozzy was meant to come down. He wanted to come down and torch the thing, and I was going to put him in like a robe thing because it's all like quite dark.
Yeah.
So you kind of wouldn't even have known it was him, but he wanted to come down, and because coincidentally it was like 20 minutes from their house, the house they've got in the UK.
Oh my god.
So anyway, that didn't happen. But
yeah, but imagine how bummed you would have been when he like lit in his like fizzled.
I
and
know,
you're like,
right?
You've been like,
yeah,
sorry,
He's there for 9 hours.
Yeah,
trying
have
to get
like
the light.
Sharon
sorry,
Osbourne.
Mister. Yeah,
have
sorry.
like Sharon Osbourne shouting at me.
What the hell? Are you an idiot?
But yeah, so we did the film, and they loved the film. So then they like turned it into a thing, part of the promo, and used it for the campaign, and
That's cool.
used all the video footage we took for the stage. They did a world tour, so then used that as like all the stage visuals, and
Wow.
and then played on that kind of whole fire theme, and went on to they did a theme. I think they did like a theme park ride at like Universal Studios in California.
Really?
Yeah, and it was all like based on the kind of artwork, and so yeah,
That's pretty cool.
yeah,
That's awesome.
that was a bit long. But.
Did you like wear the T-shirt like with the album cover for a while?
No. I just
Carried the album around. You're like eating breakfast.
I
and
did
you're
this.
Like, you're like,
No.
hey, random stranger. Did you ever see this Sabbath album? It's
no,
pretty good.
because I worked.
did.
Because I worked on it for so long. It just kind of by the end of it, you're kind of done with it, and you're like, you don't
Okay.
want to see it again, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then, it was only like but it was everyone around me that was doing that.
Yeah.
It was
okay.
like, oh, this guy, he's done this, and then you're like, oh, it's like a bit like embarrassing because like
Yeah.
I don't like
Yeah.
shouting from the raft. Like it's just like it was cool, but like
I'm the same way. Yeah,
You know.
like I definitely low key. You know.
yeah. But I guess one of the like a funny moment was there's a famous graffiti writer called Scene, who is like the king of graffiti, New Yorker from the Bronx. Was painting all the trains in the 70s. He is like the guy. He's also really into choppers, like early 60s motorcycles.
Oh, okay.
He came to London, and he was a friend of this guy I knew. And he came and hung out at our house, and like we were just sitting around. We had a barbecue. It was like, I think it must have been summertime. And I was like, when I was a kid, going back to what I was saying earlier, like loving graffiti, like, I used to sit there and like just trace his pieces like out of like these graffiti Bible books that I had.
Yeah, yeah.
So I met him, and like all the guys there, like all my friends, like chopper guys and a few hot rod guys, whatever, they didn't know who he was. And I'm inside just like, play it cool, don't. And anyway, he was kind of on his own grabbing a beer or something. I kind of went up to him. I was like, I don't want to make a scene, but I was like, I know who you are. Like, I know your work and all that stuff. We got chatting, and, most people just assume graffiti and like hip hop were one thing, right? But he's like, no, we used to like ride around New York on our bikes, like listening to like taking LSD and like listening to like Sabbath, Zeppelin, all this kind of stuff, and then would go paint trains.
Right.
And we got chatting, and it was shortly after I'd done the Sabbath thing. So then all of a sudden, like I mentioned it, and then it was turned, and he was like fanboying on me and like wanting me to sign an album cover for him, and I'm just like, this is weird. This is weird.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
How things have progressed
Yeah,
over
yeah.
the years. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And then it kind of like, it was such a big thing, but it just didn't really feel quite real until like I'm getting photos sent from me from around the world. It's like, oh, there's a billboard on the side of like the Rainbow Bar on Sunset Strip, or
Wow.
I went and saw them play, I think it was in Hyde Park or somewhere, and I'm stood there, and there's like, I don't know, tens of thousands of people stood around me with like the t-shirts on and whatever.
That's
and then you're
pretty
just
wild.
like,
Or
this-
watching Sabbath play and your artwork's behind
Yeah.
them. That's like
that was when it kind of really set in. I'm like, this is crazy.
I feel cool when we see some IronTrap shirts at like a show. We're like, oh, there's a bunch of shirts. You're like at Sabbath. You're like, yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's
Oh.
cool. It's like, it's good, I guess, to know something that's going to be around after I'm gone.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's just kind of surreal. It had to be.
Yeah.
You know.
Got the gold record above the toilet and all that stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. The gold above the
Yeah.
golden bathroom seat. That's awesome. So now during this, like doing the music stuff, were you doing skateboarding, surfing, hot rod stuff, or did you kind of come back to some of that stuff later?
I was doing like design stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was doing little bits of design. Like I kind of, again, because all my friends in London were all like, they were all motorcycle guys.
Okay.
So they all had little brands like that were popping off, and I was doing, like for you guys, like doing t-shirt graphics and stuff like that. I also was working for a company called The Great Frog,
Okay.
who a friend of mine, his parents started it back in 1972 on Carnaby Street, which is like a famous in the 60s. It was like the street where it was just super innovative for like in the fashion, that whole kind of like hippie counterculture stuff. And his parents started this jewelry brand, which is still going to today. And they kind of, I don't know the exact thing, but it's like something like they're the originators of like a skull ring and stuff like that, like in that kind of metal kind of world. So they were making jewelry for like, they made all of like Lemmy from Motorhead's rings and
That's killer.
Keith Richards from way back. Metallica is going like from the 80s up until now, and like celebrity kind of.
Yeah.
So I kind of got in there as well, and just
really?
was doing designing all their kind of like, they started expanding and just doing like clothing and stuff like that. So I just got involved with that, and then they set up shops in New York, LA, and somewhere else, Japan. So it just kind of, because I got in there early, it was just more work came from that, and obviously given the stuff I've been doing in the music industry, it all kind of like tied in together.
Right.
And then like doing stuff like, they did a collab with Moon Eyes. They did a ring for Moon Eyes. So,
No kidding.
doing some stuff for that and working with Moon Eyes, designing merch. And
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's neat. And then, so is there any? What was your favorite design thing at that? Is there something that was the most fun or the most? I mean, obviously the Sabbath things, like on your resume check.
Yeah, but then it's also like there were so many other things that were like small for like friends, like a friend's small like little album release, and then but me and another friend collaborated on it, and we kind of just did it, and we didn't get paid. Like a friend maybe like took us to dinner or something, and so there's some of those things that were like,
satisfying.
like satisfying, and even like with working with you guys, like doing your merch and seeing IronTrap, how it's progressing, and just being able to contribute to stuff like that. Like that's what I enjoy. Like the big stuff's cool. But also I like working with small brands, people that like need help and can, and you see that like that work kind of like help elevate them.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing, like, when we were doing the music stuff, we started doing stuff for Aston Martin.
Oh, okay.
So some of that work was great. Because being into cars and stuff as well, that was really cool.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool. And that's the same kind of thing. You see it on billboards or see it in a dealership or.
Yeah. So the stuff I was doing for Aston Martin, it wasn't like the day-to-day design stuff. It was like they'd come to us. It was me and my buddy Neil. They'd come to us, and it was for their like special projects. So they'd make a car, like they might make like this like super exclusive car that's like $4 million or whatever it is, and they make like 30 of them, and they've got 30 people around the world in mind who they're going to sell this car to or approach to sell it to. Like one of them was called the Vulcan, and it was a track only supercar.
Oh wow.
I can't remember how many millions, but it was ridiculous. So they came to us, they're like, here's a render of the car. We want you to like create the branding for this car. Like what's it going to look like in print and in digital and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I got, we got the task of like designing all these like really cool, like like care packages almost. That
Like
would
a
get,
sales brochure. You
Yeah.
mail to those 30 people and say,
Yeah.
help us convince them to buy this
yeah,
car.
but it'd be like a custom made box with like all these little pieces in it, and because they're getting sent to people like in Dubai or whoever who are like expect the best of the best.
Right. Wow.
So that was cool. Doing
Yeah.
things like that. And another thing, with that was, all their cars had different logos. Just going back to, I guess, I don't know how far, but the beginning of time. And they wanted to streamline that. So I was tasked with designing a logo type, which is now on all the Aston Martins
Oh,
going
crap.
forward. Yeah,
That's
so
pretty cool.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So the winged, the
So
winged
they've still
look-
got the wing, their brand. That's their brand. But like when they do like the Vulcan, or there's a car called the DBX, or they did like this crazy limited edition boat called the AM37. So I spent months doing it, maybe like 3 months or something, working with the car designers, going back and forth, because they all think they're graphic designers as well. And then, design this custom typeface that had to be used in like 2D for like print, 3D for like when they're making the badges on the car. It had to work in like the leather in the interior.
Wow.
So then,
that's got to be tough.
yeah, so then they use that as like the base. This typeface, they've used that as the base to then create these slight variations of logos. So all the new Aston Martins have that on the car.
Wow.
So that's cool. There's like the Sabbath thing. You walk around, you're like, oh yeah,
There's that
Yeah.
that typeface I did.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you got like 3 of them in the garage. Then.
Oh yeah, of course.
Super lucrative deal.
Of course.
So what? A couple things I definitely want to learn about, or I enjoy the
Yeah.
story. So the Surface Sam thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a neat story. That when we came to visit you, you were telling us the background on how you
Yeah.
kind of tracked the guy down, or revived it. Can you give us a?
Yeah, so I've always just been like you guys. I've always just been into like collecting old things and stuff like that. Old bikes, like
Yeah.
a lot of old like Schwinn's and JC Higgins and all that kind of the 40s, 50s stuff. And then also like old skateboards and just, stuff
Right.
that, I probably don't need, but I just like it. So I used to see these old wooden, I'm really into the beginning stages of skateboarding.
Okay.
Where it's like that real crossover from surfing. These kids like they're sidewalk surfing, like
Yep.
when there's no surf, they're on the sidewalk.
Yep.
And I kind of just, I always was just looking around, the usual spots like eBay and whatever, and I kept seeing these particular skateboards that had this really cool logo on it, of this little logo character.
Yep.
So I started doing some digging around because I had, there was no information on this company on the internet. Because it was all like pre-internet, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
It just kind of gets lost, And then just by seeing different things online, like on eBay, like different posts, discovered it was Australia's first ever skateboard company. But I just had assumed it was American, like an American brand or something.
Oh,
like
okay.
Because it was way before my time. Like,
Yep.
And then I actually, being a designer, I saw the logo and I was like, man, this is like you could really do something with this and
Right.
turn it into a brand and, expand into apparel and all that kind of stuff. And especially once I found out it was Australia's first skateboard company.
Yeah.
I'm like, how can and at that time I was still in London and I'd kind of had planned to move back to
Okay.
Australia. So I was kind of like, oh, it's a good project to do. I'm going back and all that. So once I found out it was Australia's first skateboard company, I'm like, this is just weird that it's like no one's done anything.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like I'm into this stuff. I've never heard of it. Like there must be so many people that don't know this exists or
yeah.
existed.
Right.
So when I was in London, I somehow found out the guy's name who started the company, and he had a Greek surname, Greek descent. So I went through the phone book, because I'm like, someone with this surname has to be related to this guy,
Right.
if he's even still alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got onto some lady, can't remember what connection she was, but older lady, and she's like, yeah, he's still alive. Kindly passed on his phone number, so I rang him.
How many people were in the phone book with that last name?
I can't even remember now.
Was there like a ton?
There was a ton, but it actually like I only got like a little way down, and I got lucky.
Wow.
So it wasn't like I got like 100 through. Like I think it was in like the top 10 or something like that.
That's
And
wild.
the lady's like, oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, here's his number. Give him a call. What?
Yeah, so I tracked him down, told him I was coming back to Australia soon. Asked where he lived. Turns out it was like 5 minutes from where I was going to be moving to. So kind of all just it just kind of all worked out. Yeah.
And then you ended up going to see him, and he had some of the stuff still? Or?
So he had a couple of things still, not much, because, back then it was like, I guess it was like, it was different. Like, for him, firstly, he was studying medicine. He wanted to become a doctor. So he set this thing up purely as like a business venture. He wasn't a surfer or anything like that.
Wow.
His friend who lived in Bondi Beach had 2 young kids, and they used to make skateboards with the other neighborhood kids with the usual piece of timber, cut in half roller skate, all that kind of thing. And his friend was like, why don't you make these and sell them and turn it into a business?
Yeah.
So when I spoke to him, he knew he was like the first one in Australia to do it, but he wasn't sure if he was the first one in the world, because it's so long ago, right? Like, how do you don't, and back then, like, Australia might as well have been Mars to the rest of the world.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I'm kind of, what was the
So you said you met with him.
So yeah, I met with him, kind of told him like what I want to do, and he's just like, why do you want to do that? Like, what? Like,
who cares?
Yeah, who cares?
Because
like,
you said he stopped in what, the 70s?
So yeah, he was studying medicine. He ended up becoming a doctor. His next door neighbor, this lady, she kind of ended up running the factory.
Wow.
For him, and he was just busy with his medical practice, and then he said to me, it just became too hard doing both, and he just wanted to obviously focus on being a doctor as opposed to making skateboards, right? Because why would you do skateboards? But
he wanted to make money, like real money.
well, he said to me, he's like, I wanted to be in the business of helping people, not hurting people.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah. So yeah, I kind of pitched my idea and what I wanted to do, and he's just like, whatever,
That's crazy.
Didn't really kind of have too much to like. He was like, cool, because I was like, I wanted to keep his name in the story, like Vans do with the Van Doren family.
Yeah.
It's not like just erasing that,
Yep.
So I asked him for his permission to like keep his name in it, and he gave me some old photos of him from when he was not him in the factory or anything, but just when he was a young guy.
Yeah.
So I wanted to keep that as part of the story, and being just like into history myself, I just nerd out on that, like you guys do. Like you just nerd out on those little details, and
And you had found some of the skateboards eventually, right?
So I started buying some up, and then learning more about it, meeting older guys who that school me on some things, and then because he lived 5 minutes from my house, I'd just like every like month or two, I'd just call him up, go chat with him, and Leo's like, I think he's 87 now.
Wow.
So and it was a long time ago. Like he had a whole nother career.
Yeah.
So
at this point, it was like 50 some years, right?
Yeah, and like he'd just like forgotten about it. Like it was just something in his past, right? So I'm there like all like energetic, like enthusiastic, asking like all these nerdy questions. He's like, I don't know, like, but then he'd start talking about something, and then I'd be like, oh, what was that? And I'd just be making notes.
Yeah.
Anything he said, I'd make a note, because every time I met him, he'd just remember something else. And like the old hot rod guys. Like,
it's the same with the cars. Yeah, with the car stuff.
Yeah.
When we find a survivor car,
Yeah,
he takes 2, 3, 4, 5 times of visiting or calling to get the brain working, and
Or they're like, I don't remember anything, and then next time you call them, they're like, oh, back, and you're like, well, that's something.
Yeah. Like, oh, I didn't think that was interesting. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So I met him, just started gathering that quickly. sat him down, had met this other guy who's a videographer, and I was like, we need to capture this guy. Like, you know, he's getting on in age. I'm like, I don't want this story to just be.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to be the one who just makes it up. Like, I want to hear it from him.
Yep.
So we just kind of quickly put something together and shot this little, like, I think it's like a minute long, like, mini documentary, like just him telling us the story.
Wow.
And then, yeah.
And then you started, you know, obviously you were doing a good job of putting the brand out there in modern times, and people
Yeah.
started to kind of like become aware. And
Yeah. Well, like, luckily, because of my background in design, I can do it. I can do all the, you know, the marketing design myself, where if I hadn't, it'd be a different story. Like the money, the cost involved of doing all that stuff, just, you know, and you can do things on the fly and you're like, oh, I can do that. Like, and just release things. Right.
Right.
And so I just started, I had a very clear idea of what I wanted to do with it. Like, I made reproductions of like, he made a bunch of different skateboards, but the iconic one was the one with this logo on it. So I just made some replicas of that. Wasn't sure if there was going to be much interest in that, or maybe only the older guys that had them back in the day would want one because they want to replace it and hang it on their wall.
Yep.
But yeah, like, it kind of, you know,
People started buying them, and
yeah. But my goal with it from day one was to turn it into more of like a menswear brand.
Yep.
Based around that kind of classic 60s kind of surf inspired, you know, where surfers were wearing, like, you know, I'm not saying I'm doing button ups and all that yet, but, like, you know, surfers wearing like Oxford button up shirts and, you know, loafers, you know, like penny loafers. And it was almost like that Ivy League kind of era. So that very clean cut thing. So I kind of had a very clear idea. I want to keep it to that time period. It's like, I look at it as like Sam, this little 60s kid. What was he into? He was into skateboarding, surfing, hot rods, monster art. Like, you know, I just had made up this character in my head. And that I kind of used that as the kind of direction for it.
Okay.
You know?
And then you were able to, I mean, you're already, in the grand scheme of things, short time you've been doing it.
Yeah. That was maybe like 3 years ago. Maybe.
You were like collabing with, you know, doing some collabs. So
yeah.
Did you do something, you recently, 2 years ago, did something with
J. Crew.
J. Crew.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm terrible.
Yeah.
My memory.
So actually, yeah, I did something with J. Crew over here in the US, which was quite cool.
Yeah.
It wasn't for their like nationwide stuff. They had a concept shop in New York on the Bowery, directly across from CBGB's, which was quite cool. All the old CBGB's.
Yep.
And that shop was very different to their regular J. Crew shops, which I came to learn. I didn't know much about J. Crew, or, you know. So that was really cool. Like, it was for this summer campaign they did. We did like a bunch of tees, some skateboards, you know. And what I love about it is, like, you know, now there's people in New York learning about this little company that started in Sydney back in the 60s. And it's like spreading that story. And that was like from the start. That was like the thing that I was noting. I just want people to know this story, because this is cool. How can this history be lost? So it's like sharing that history with people, you know?
Right. So you already had the site, and you were selling online to people.
I was already selling at that point.
But this was the first time it was into like a physical store location.
It'd been in other had been in other shops, but like more like little boutiques in like Japan and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And in Europe. So this was like a biggest.
Yeah. That's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that had to be surreal, because you happened to come over last time during that. And
well, yeah, I had a trip planned for that time anyway. All around that time, so I just fast tracked it because that all came out, and I thought, well, it's a good time to come over, see it, make sure it's all looking good. And
the one story I remember you telling me when you were making the deal, I don't know if you want to tell it or not, but like you were like, they thought you were like a big skateboard company when you were making the deal.
Yeah. So I guess like it kind of it still happens to this day. Like it's literally just me doing everything. Like, well, I get help getting the boards made because I'm not set up to do all that stuff, but yeah, like most people think it's like there's like a team of like all the emails like, hey, like if you're on your team, like it's always team, but it's like it's literally just
we get the same thing.
Yeah.
People are like, how many guys work there? And it's like, it's us.
Yeah.
It's just us. There's no like secret team behind the cameras.
Sometimes we
Yeah.
pretend though if we don't want to talk to somebody, like, oh yeah, Matt's really busy right now, and I'm
Yeah,
typing. I'm his secretary.
Let me connect you to the accounting department.
yeah.
IronTrap Accounting, how can I help you?
Yeah, I've done that sometimes.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like what you guys.
Yeah,
you were
so
doing.
they were like, oh, I got this email and it was like, oh, if we'd love to have a meeting with you and your team and all this kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, oh, what am I going to do about that? Like,
Hire a bunch of friends
Yeah,
to get on the call with
yeah,
you.
but and anyway, I ended up having a phone call with the buyer, I think, and some other guys. It was a video call actually, but it ended up being like midnight, I think, back in Australia.
Wow.
So I kind of went downstairs. I run it all from home.
Yeah.
So I'm just sat. I'm like, all right, there's a white wall. Just sit there. I'm like, put on like a nice shirt.
Get your pajamas.
Yeah, I'm like
Pajamas
literally in
on.
like boxer shorts. And they're like, we want to do this. I'm like, yeah, I'll check. I'll have to think about it. I'll check with the guys. Like, we don't want to mess with the brand, the history of it too much. Like, we want to be careful how,
Yeah.
But it all worked out, and I think they probably, as time went on, realized it was just probably me.
Yeah.
You're folding the shirts in your
Yeah.
house, and
Yeah, it was like me and my partner Nadia. Like, we were literally packing. Like, without her, like we wouldn't have got it done.
wow.
Because we got everything done locally and then shipped it.
So you printed it all in Australia
All
and
got
then
printed
shipped
in
it.
Australia just for like quality control.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And then like we had to have everything printed, packed, paid for before it got to them. So for me as well, like it was a risk because I'm like, well, I had to like borrow, like, I didn't have that kind of money like to make it all, but I'm not going to say no.
And they
Yeah.
didn't want like 100 shirts. It was probably a
No,
decent amount.
it was a big amount.
Yeah.
So it was risky, but then it wasn't because you're like, well, it's J Crew. Like they're not gonna. Well, you'd think they wouldn't screw.
But you already knew from your previous jobs in the industry that like sometimes the biggest brands are the ones that'll fuck you the hardest because there's no recourse.
Oh yeah, like just change their mind at like
the last
for
minute.
whatever reason.
Yeah.
And then you're screwed. So it was like it was a bit touch and go.
Yeah.
But it all worked out. So
Yeah, that's super
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was exciting stuff to see that. And then did you, and we can cut this out if this isn't, did you work with Moon Eyes or is that?
So still in talks with Moon Eyes. They
Okay.
want to do so Shiggy, who is one of the owners of Moon Eyes, randomly I was at Moon Eyes a few years ago in Japan, maybe 2 years ago, I think. And I was with a friend of mine who knows him really well. And I was like, oh, I'll give him a sticker. I just give stickers. Like, stickers are like the currency. Just growing up, like, riding BMX and skating, like, you just, stickers are like the thing.
Even in hot rodding, stickers.
Yeah, everyone loves a sticker,
Yeah.
right? So I'm like, I'll give Shige a sticker. And he's like, oh, I know your brand. I'm like, what? And he's like, I have some T-shirts of yours. I bought some product. I'm like, really? Because when I'm I'm literally processing I'm doing everything. So I'm like, I maybe would have seen that name and it would have clicked and I thought Japan, whatever. But he got someone else to buy it for him. And then I was like, so I gave him the sticker and he's like, the only thing that's missing? I'm like, kind of thinking, what's he going to say? And he's like, the Moon Eyes logo. I was like,
You're right.
yeah.
You're right.
Definitely.
Good point. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, good point. So we have been talking about
Like a collab.
doing some kind of collab. He loves what I'm doing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and he's actually shared some really cool photos, like old moon photos that I've never seen before, like surfing kind of related things in Hawaii.
Wow.
It's early. Like, well, I'm assuming it's early because it's like all these girls are wearing like the moon, the classic white with the black moon eyes, but it was the big print, which I think they did very early on.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, still trying to make it happen.
That's cool. But that's
Yeah.
exciting stuff that like,
Yeah.
and it does take years and you're trying to make it an organic thing. So it's like you're trying. I understand that
Yeah.
you're not trying to be like pushy. You know.
Yeah.
The right time. Will
And it's
happen.
also just being just me. It's hard to just, I don't want to do it half-assed.
Yeah.
Like, if it's half-assed, I don't care if it's Moon or anyone, I just won't do it.
Right.
Like, it has to be done properly.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Just, just for personal satisfaction. And also, I think because I beat myself up a lot, because that's what I do for a job and for other clients. If it's not up to that standard, then it's just, what's the point of doing it?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Wow, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's cool. So, in the recent times with the IronTrap stuff, how did you come across, us or start following what we were doing?
Those Eastwood videos.
That's great.
So
They're
fun.
like a lot of people. Those early, I don't know. Like it probably just the algorithm. Maybe just
Yeah,
put it on my
totally.
YouTube. Like who knows what I was watching, like car related thing. But yeah, and just I was in London at that time in a small apartment. No, I lived in an apartment like my whole adult life.
Yep.
So living in London's like I say to people, like, because everyone's like, oh, did you have a car? It's like living in Manhattan.
You didn't
like
need.
you can't have a hot. Well, you could probably have a hot rod in Manhattan or a custom, but you got to have a lot of money to park it somewhere.
Right.
It's not realistic for
Yep.
for 99% of people. So I used to just nerd out on things like that and kind of almost live this like through your videos of like
What we were
I couldn't
doing.
own a hot rod, so it was like watching those videos was I was learning things and all that kind of stuff, watching you guys build them and stuff. So from that, and then I can't even remember how we met after that. It was obviously through social media, but I can't remember what was the thing that like.
It was there was the as far as I remember it was I think we had DM'd back and forth, but I think it was the Flathead logo.
Ah, yeah.
Kind of how that came apart, as far as I remember, because I posted much like you do with your
That's
brand.
right,
I
yeah.
randomly will post neat old photos
Yeah,
or
yeah.
stuff in my collection,
Yeah.
and we had DM'd before, and you like hit me up like, that's super cool. Like, you guys should do a logo.
That's right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And then you weren't like pushy about it. You were like, you guys should do a logo. That would be really cool. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that would be neat. And
Yeah,
then you
yeah.
followed it up with like, well, I kind of do that stuff if you need help.
Yeah.
And then Mike and I, we were already doing merch, but it was like, we hadn't come up with like an iconic logo yet. Or not iconic, just like a staple
Yeah.
logo.
I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, because we only had the Ride With Us shirt and it had the pagoda logo on the breast.
Which,
yeah.
and I felt strongly about that, but then we quickly learned that like,
everyone thought it was a Christmas tree.
yeah, like if you weren't local here, you didn't know what that was, and it
Yeah.
was like, I thought it was awesome, but it didn't. And
Didn't connect with people
Yeah.
outside of Pennsylvania.
yeah, and all of the ventures I've done throughout my life, or most of my life, I've had friends that were tattoo artists, so I usually just went to them and got it done, and it was like kind of on the side.
That's
or,
who did
Yeah.
our first design, was our good friend that's a tattoo artist.
Yeah, and when I had another business, my buddy Justin, that's done a lot of my tattoos, he did a kick-ass design for me for free that should have been like a bunch of money,
Yeah,
but like
yeah.
he's a pretty famous tattoo artist, and he wasn't going to do like 10 of those. So,
Yeah,
like, he
yeah.
did that one once, and I
Yeah.
used up my favor, and
Yeah.
now it's not as easy, you
Yeah,
know, but
yeah.
like, and he had a different style. So our buddy
Yeah.
Eddie helped with the other one, but like same idea. He did it one time. You're not going to
Yeah.
keep going back. So
Yeah.
when you like kind of popped up and asked that, we're like, oh, all right, that's cool.
Yeah.
That is a good idea, and obviously you
Yeah.
did a good job.
It's our best selling piece of merch ever. So
Yeah, cool.
yeah.
Yeah, that's our.
When's my royalty check?
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready.
You can get all the Flathead shirts you want.
Yeah. There are tens of hundreds of dollars.
yeah.
But yeah, it definitely was cool. But I don't, like I said, it's interesting hearing from the other side. You were saying like
Yeah.
watching what we were doing progress from afar. You
Yeah.
know, like
And it's cool that you've watched us basically from the beginning. So you kind
Yeah.
of saw like none of this up here existed. It
Yeah.
was just us downstairs in the
Yeah.
garage.
And
Yeah.
it was a lot emptier back then.
Yeah. It went from really empty to insanely full to now it's kind of empty.
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
not empty, but just
Yeah.
a little
Not
more
as
comfortable.
packed.
But it's like, it goes back to that thing like I was saying earlier, like, working with these big brands, but then also like I love working with small brands. and helping people. Like if I know it's going to help your business,
Yeah.
like I get a kick out of that because it's like it's exciting for me as well,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So it was like when you posted that old graphic, and we're like, and what we ended up doing was completely different from
Yeah.
the original.
Yeah. It was a
reference.
jump off point, but yeah.
Yeah, but you know, I knew you guys were just two guys having
Yeah.
a crack at something. Like, you know, I wasn't expecting to get paid like a bunch of money. Like it wasn't that.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, I think I could do something cool with that. I like what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think it could help you.
Right.
And well, good thing it did. Good thing, you know, luckily you didn't just sell like 5 and then you know,
This guy
I'll
sucks.
just disappear from the Instagram
Yeah.
account. But yeah, like it, you know, it worked, and I hope it has. You know, I hope it has helped
Yeah, definitely.
progress.
Oh, for
you know.
sure. Yeah, it definitely. It definitely helped, and kind of becoming friends with you, and learning the. I already knew the menswear stuff and was aware of the fashion stuff, but the way of thinking of different logos, doing maybe smaller runs of stuff and more. That's why we've changed our way of doing our merch. You know, it's like where we do a kind of neat design and just do a small batch of them
And like doing like tees, sweatshirt, like anything like that is hard. Like, you know, because everyone's got their own preference. People don't like black t-shirts. People like white. People don't like pockets. People don't like hoods.
And the profit margins aren't that big either. You're making
like
very
unless
little
you're
money.
doing big numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess, you know, just look at the fashion industry on a whole. Like they're the biggest contributors to, you know, waste.
Yeah.
You know, and that's like even with Surface M, I do everything like super small runs. You know, it's a slightly higher price point because it's not just something you buy and just, you know, it's like a, you know, as you know, you it's your good shirt, you call it.
Yeah.
Same with me. I don't wear mine anywhere else but out to like nice functions.
You know, like I'm not trying to just do some fast fashion thing, you know. It's everything's considered, and it's like, you know, so when you get it, it feels a bit more special, right?
Yeah, and we struggle with that a little bit because very much our stuff's working class kind of hot rod guys.
Yeah,
so like, we've talked about that before, doing a better shirt or a higher, you know, whatever, or offering, you know, a more, and it's like it's hard because
but most of your custom, like, you know,
they're just hot
your
rod
followers
guys.
getting them dirty anyway.
Yeah,
you know?
and they're
That's why 90% of them are black.
Yeah. So I think that's tough for us. We've thought about doing that where we did maybe some higher end hoodies or you know like a club type jacket thing, like throwback. But it's like it's tough. It's like somebody will spend $200 on a jacket or $100 on a hoodie,
and everyone loves it. Everyone will tell you how much they love it and want it, and then when it comes down to like, all right, they're available. Those people,
Crickets,
for some reason, are, you know, not supporting the cause. So.
Yeah. We get those all the time where people say you should do this or do that, and it's kind of hard.
We even have problems just getting old dudes to buy $25 t-shirts.
Yeah.
So it's like they bitch about a price of a normal t-shirt to begin with. So it's like,
I just wonder where are you buying your clothes from?
well, you're going to Walmart and you're buying the 30 pack of black t-shirts for $15.
Yeah. And
then they're lasting like a few weeks before they're all busted out. And, you know.
Yeah, so that's kind of hard. But I think now we've kind of, with you helping us with some logos, I kind of understand a little bit how the progression is. So now it's like and it's really easy for me now because it's much like we were talking last night about the hot rods using historic cars as a jump off point. So now it's like the same thing, using old typography, old advertisements from the era that you are trying to, you know, harness. As the jump off point for that. So like the Robot Man we talked about was or Parts Man was a jump off from an old Ford advertisement, you know. So it's like now I'm always looking at old advertisements, you know.
Yeah. Or like just even in this room, like this, like in like the little books and it's all those little like bits of detailing, those things that were just like throwaway kind of like bits of illustration that you know. There's something cool about all that stuff. That, you know, is good to reference and kind of build upon, and you know, all that stuff.
Yeah, and I do that a lot more now when I look at the old hot rod magazines and little books. I'm actually looking at the advertisements now, and I'm like,
he's sending me photos of like the old comics. Or he's like, this would be a cool T-shirt.
Yeah.
There's so many photos that both of us have.
Yeah.
Like, this would be a cool T-shirt design.
Yeah, I do have a little file in my phone. It's like little different
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
It's like, oh man, that would be cool to do a little character off that, or
Well, it's like that. I think the label, something on some a box you had. And I was I'll take a photo.
I gotta
of that.
take a
Like,
photo of that. Yeah, it's
and it's
it's a Wolverine camshaft. There's like a little guy in
it's
a
in here.
car.
Yeah.
and you just like that's just no one's meant to like look at that twice and think that's like it's just
Remind me, it's in the warehouse.
Yeah,
So after
yeah.
this, we'll go.
I have one up here too.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I think my box is a little worse, but
It's
yeah,
kind of like just bringing that stuff to the surface and like appreciating it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's something that was just a throwaway bit of.
Yeah, they used it on that label for like
Yeah.
a couple years, and then they put
Yeah.
something else on the label.
Probably didn't think any much of it.
No.
well, and that cam company wasn't around for a real
No.
long time or real popular, so like
Yeah.
that little logo got lost in
Yeah.
time pretty quickly. So
It'd be cool to track down like who some of these people are, and
Yeah.
it'd be. I'm sure it's impossible, but
Yeah. that-
yeah, there's a lot of people that are doing a good job that are searching some of that down. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is like you found with what you were doing, like it's very labor intensive. The looking in the phone book,
Yeah, yeah,
calling
yeah.
people, then physically going to them, and
Yeah.
so we
yeah,
would love to do more of that. It's always just
Yeah.
time. Time is
Yeah.
the hard part, but
it's weird as well. Like I'm even like going back to when I was a kid. Like when I think about it, it's like going into old skate shops or getting like RC cars, like and you get the sheet of like decals. Like that were the
yeah.
things that like I'd go into a skate shop and I'd just like go straight to the sticker cabinet or like just like froth over all the graphics on the boards. Like,
Yeah.
and even like with like race cars, like
yeah.
I love the artwork on the cars. Like it's just
Oh yeah, all the hand lettering or the the
Yeah,
details, and that's what made some of these old race cars and hot rods super iconic was
Yeah.
because of the pinstriping or the lettering or
exactly.
the insert in the grill that's painted up.
Yeah.
So it's like
and I sometimes go to that stuff first before like looking at like maybe the rare speed stuff. I'm just
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Oh, look at
Or
that."
even the car as a whole.
Yeah.
You're just like hyper focusing on a little detail.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you're taking photos like rare speed or like how'd they do that? Like
fabrication piece.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm just like look at that little bit of like pinstriping.
Yeah, that's funny. I like the way they did the tail on that S.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So, and you've been collecting. So a lot of your collection of vintage stuff is
Yeah.
kind of around that cool advertisement or
Yeah,
typography.
Yeah, I don't really like I collect stuff, but not like, as you saw, like there's not like a certain thing I just like just old bits of, and I'm not talking like porcelain signs and stuff like that. I'm not that kind of that kind of guy like with that kind of money, but just little bits of advertising, little just bits of vintage clothing, stuff like that. A couple of those car club jackets that you saw,
killer.
which
Yeah.
were like two. I don't know if Matt told you about these two Californian club
Yeah.
jackets.
I think you sent me a photo when he was there.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
that stuff's crazy, but that just goes to show you got to hunt everywhere. I mean, you found them in Australia, right?
No, I found them.
Or
I
England.
found them in London
That's right. Okay.
in a vintage clothing shop that I had been going to for years, and it's like vintage clothing, but it's like it's just more crappy secondhand. It's not really like
yeah.
50s, 60s vintage. It's like modern like Y2K stuff.
Right.
And they just had listed them as like sports jackets. but not at the same time. It was like I was saying to you, I think it was yesterday, I found one, and then maybe it was like 2 months later, the other one popped up.
That's wild.
And they were cheap.
Yeah,
Cheap,
yeah, and
cheap,
that's
like the price of a pizza. Let's put it as-
but that's like that just goes to show you need to always be hunting, no matter where you are, even in the world. He's finding American
Yeah.
hot rod jackets in England,
Yeah.
and they were cheap. You would think like if that popped up in England, it would have been super expensive, but
yeah.
it was
Well, they just I guess people just didn't know what it was, and
so far removed from the culture that
Yeah.
it wasn't,
Yeah.
it wasn't in there.
they
so
was probably just like, oh, it's got a car on the back, like.
who
Yeah,
knows? Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. It was a high school football jacket.
Yeah,
You're
like
yeah, totally.
yeah.
Yes, that's why same. We're always hunting, everywhere
Yeah.
we go.
Some of the best shit's found in the most unusual places.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were hunting. Right when you
Yeah.
got off the plane, we went to an industrial salvage place that was having a little sale, and like Nick found these stacks of old advertising rulers, and one of them was the era of Lincoln Mercury, and it's local, little ruler, and I'm like, I've never seen that. That's super cool. But it was like the place is known for like selling you stained glass windows out of
More of
mansions.
an industrial salvage than that stuff.
But we walked there and found like neat
Yeah,
stuff that, like, if this was at a car parts flea market, it would have got sold in the first 15 minutes.
Yeah,
It was,
yeah.
like, super
It's
cool.
also hilarious that rulers were a form of advertising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like everyone, no matter what the
Yeah.
company, advertised on rulers. And
Yes.
I don't know if anyone advertises.
I think just America in general, like, and that's what I was saying to you, like when we've been chatting about it, just advertised on everything,
literally
and
everything.
that's what I like. When I saw that, like I love that ruler because it's like that's not meant to be around. Like
No.
that was just a ruler. Maybe it's like a promotional thing. That's it.
Pens, all
Pens,
that stuff.
yeah.
Keychains.
Keychains.
None of that
Okay.
stuff was supposed to
Yeah, I
survive.
love
It was
that
just
stuff.
that was just you
Yeah.
bought a car, you got a keychain, a ruler, a pen, you got
Yeah.
all this random stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think as my collection's been evolving, I'm more looking for that, like, you'll never see another one. Like,
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
shouldn't have existed. And some of the stuff in my collection hanging up is like stuff like that you're like, probably never see another one because it wouldn't have survived.
Yeah.
You know, a cardboard sign in a dealership in the 30s wouldn't have survived. It
But
would've,
that silk banner that
Yeah.
we're looking at
Yeah.
right over there.
Yeah, that thing should have been sun faded and dried out, and
Yeah.
moths got to it or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. But
Yeah.
well, thank you, Nick. Is there anything you want to give a
I
shout
don't
out?
think so. I think we kind of covered everything. Yeah.
But so where can everybody find your like social media website kind of
Yeah,
stuff?
so I guess for like my design stuff, it's nickdartdesign.com. You can see like I'm pretty slack with updating it, but
That's all right.
But you can see like the things we talked about, like the Black Sabbath project. You can see there's the film as well, so you can see the making of it. I think there's also some photos of us, constructing the numbers and stuff like that, and a few of those Aston Martin projects as
Cool.
well. And then it's Surfer Sam, spelt SURFA
Yep.
SAM.
I'll put all the links in the podcast and
Yeah.
video description to
Surfer
make it
Sam
easy.
skateboards.
Yeah, make it easy for everyone.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. Well, thank you, man.
That's
Appreciate you
all right.
sitting
Yeah.
down with us.
That's all right. I'm glad, like I said, I don't enjoy being on camera, but
Nah,
it
it's cool.
wasn't too painful.
Yeah,
No,
we
it's
try to
just
make
a
it good.
conversation.
Yeah.
But I think it's fun talking about people's different, that was what our podcast started as, is we
Yeah.
didn't want to just do car people or car stuff. Like, more like I like the nerding out on
Yeah,
the design aspect or the, whatever, because it's all,
It kind of all is
Yes.
intertwined.
Yeah.
and,
yeah, it all comes together. So now we're going to go to Brimfield and go
Yeah.
hunt for good old junk.
More stuff we don't need.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. So thank you, Nick. Appreciate it.
No worries.
Thank you guys for
See ya.
following along. Catch you later.
See ya.